But for today, we kind of have a special series, or one-off series, I should say. And I wanted to reflect on today our story as a church, kind of our foundings, and tying that into the scripture, and also just taking a step back and seeing that you guys are continuing and are part of the story of Liberty Christian Church. I don't know about you, but when I read through the New Testament, and specifically the book of Matthew, and it starts off with these genealogies, it's like a chapter of just names. Do you guys usually skip that part? Maybe some of you, maybe I need to repent of that or something, but I think there is a lot of health to take a step back and reflect on where you came from. And the story of Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew, it's cool because you see in his timeline, there's a lot of jacked up stuff and a lot of messed up people, and Jesus redeems that. But I think there's power in looking at our story and where we've come from. And what's cool is, as I was doing some research, I should rewind. One of our former church members, her name is Margie Morley. How many recognize that name? A couple of you, yeah, the old Libertyites. So Margie Morley put together in her time at Liberty about 5 books, like historical books and scrapbooks of the foundings of this church and stuff. And if any of you guys would ever like to borrow them, just come talk to me. You can look through them. It's fascinating and really fun. So I was reading through all of those these last couple of weeks, and it was just really cool to learn a lot of things that I didn't even know about the history of our church here at Liberty Christian Church. Because as we reflect on our, almost like our genealogy and the matriarchs and patriarchs, the people who founded our church family, a lot of that DNA that exists is still a part of our church family today. A lot of their thumbprints you can experience in the community that we have here today. Their pursuit of Jesus and community and creating a space for people to come and to worship in South Salem. And so I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes, reflect kind of on our family DNA. And I mean, how many of you guys like history? Some of you got some history buffs in the room. I just find it so fascinating. Again, there's so many things that I learned about our church family that I never knew before. And I even went to Miss Kim Vincent's house. You weren't there, Kim, but I interviewed your mother and Kim's mom. Kim's over here. She hates being called out, but this is the last time I'll say your name, Kim, I promise. But her mom was a part of our church from almost its founding, and so her grandmother was at the core of the beginnings of Liberty Christian Church, and we'll talk about that story in a minute. But our church, our origins, we began in 1937. Do any of you remember 1937? I don't think anybody in this room. And what's cool about our church is that when it began in the end of the 1930s, we met in people's homes. And I think that's really cool because, again, that's the founding of our church. We met in people's homes. The pursuit of community, of family, of love is at the foundation of our church. And I have a picture I want to show you. This is one of the first pastors of Liberty Christian Church. His name is Jesse Johnson. What a handsome young gentleman he is he not? So he was the pastor. If you look at the beginning, the timeline of our church, usually pastors came for about 12 to 18 months. So he's one of the first ones. And I do think it's a little humorous because if this picture wasn't black and white and had the grain on it from film, he would almost look like he's a hipster from Portland today. Like you would see him walking around in downtown Portland. And that's just kind of how history repeats itself, I guess. But man, what a classy suit. So this is Jesse Johnson. He was the pastor of Liberty from 1940 to 1941. So I believe that's when the church was meeting in people's homes, but also at the very beginnings of when we met in Liberty Elementary School, which we started to meet in the early 1940s. We met in the basement of Liberty Elementary School. Back then it was just called Liberty School because I believe it was kindergarten all the way up to through high school. And in my research, this is just so cool, I found out that really this corner of Skyline and Liberty, specifically the Liberty School, was really the centerpiece of the community in South Salem. Do any of you guys remember the old Liberty Elementary School or Liberty School? A couple of you guys in here, maybe. You do, Crystal? So they knocked it down in, early 60s or something like that. But there is a Liberty Elementary School building, or a Liberty School, 3-story stick building that I believe was built in either the late 1800s or very early 1900s. And again, it was the centerpiece of the community out here. People would walk, when I was talking to Kim's mom this last week, she said people would walk all the way from where Sherry's is today, almost the stories, uphill both ways, snow type deal, but that's what it was. They would walk from multiple miles all to come to the school. There was community events. Again, the church was meeting there on Sundays. So much life existed on this street corner where we exist today at this elementary school. So we have some fun pictures kind of in this era. You put the first one up there, Maurice. So this is, you can see behind him, this is the original Liberty School. And this was after a Sunday gathering. And these two women, is this your mom, Jody? Do you reckon? No, that's not. Jody's got some roots here too in her family. But this was a meeting, and they knocked that building down in the 60s and replaced it with what it is today. But I just thought it was cool that on this corner of Liberty and Skyline, going back almost 100 years, people have found community in this place. One more picture there, Maurice. And here's a picture of Liberty Elementary. I believe this is the 1950s. This is the decade before they knocked it down. You can still see, if you drove by the school today, you would see all of those, the windows and stuff in the front. But that building in the back, that's the bell tower where the bell at our church now exists. But that was a 3-level stick building that so many years our church met there in the basement. Isn't that crazy? In the basement. So from people's homes to the basement. And again, my encouragement is that's how much they believed in church and in the community here out in South Salem. And then in the end of the 1940s, so they met the school, I believe, almost a decade in the basement. And the end of the 1940s, they purchased this property, from what I heard from Kim's mom, from the janitor of Liberty School. And they built the building that we're in right now. Maurice, you can put the picture up there, please. There's our original church building. In fact, you can see those windows when you drive by. Can you guys see the stained glass through this door? You see them back there? Some of you sitting on this side. So those windows still exist. And if we took off the wood plank siding, you would still see that center window. And I believe there's still a cross in the top right there. So at the end of the 1940s, we built this building with a loan from First Christian Church downtown Salem. Somebody want to guess how much that loan was for to build this building? Someone throw out a number. Oh, Sean was here first service. Dang it, Sean. You ruined the game, Sean. $4,000. They got a loan from First Christian Church I believe it's 1945. They received the loan. And in this picture, you can see that that's actually that's like a congregational picture. You can go back, Maurice, to the story one. That's our church congregation. Maurice, go back one. They're right there. That's our church congregation right there. All of our brothers and sisters of faith meeting at the original church building. So, isn't that cool? They believed, they took a step of faith to go out a loan for $4,000, and they built this building, and they faithfully met here for decades and decades, and really the city grew around us. Have you guys seen the movie Up, the classic Pixar movie? And you know how the guy has that yellow house, and around him is this giant city and these skyscrapers? Now, it's not really that far, but it's kind of like that for us, where when they built this church, it was really a farming community. There's fields of trees, and there was a cannery across the street. And I read a newspaper article that Liberty Christian Church was considered 4 miles outside the city of Salem when it was built. Isn't that crazy? And now, almost 100 years later, city limits shoot out 3 miles. And I was just reflecting on our story and kind of where we came from. And as we reflect back on our history, I think it's important that we don't, sweep things under the rug that saying it was a perfect time back then. We're just trying to pursue what was there, There was aspects that were really beautiful and fun and healthy in Jesus and community. But what I'm not saying is that we were perfect. We're human. They were human then. We're human now. Raise your hand if you make mistakes. I think we all make mistakes. I know I make a lot of mistakes. There were aspects that were healthy, not healthy. We weren't perfect. But my reflection is what has remained in that is the pursuit of Jesus and the pursuit of community. So the matriarchs and patriarchs decided that they wanted to see a community of believers in South Salem. And from what I've read and what I've seen in interviewing people and reading the documents that we have is they had a high value of community, being involved in the community, loving one another, and really being a family. So we got a couple pictures. Again, Maurice put the first one up here. This is Leota Sipe. Does anyone remember the Sipe family? There's a couple of maybe the older Libertyites in here. She was involved in this church for a very long time. This is Leota Sipe volunteering at Liberty Elementary School at that era. Was called Liberty Elementary School, and she's teaching the kids how to quilt. Isn't that fun? I just thought it was cool that someone in our church valued the community, the school, that she was volunteering in the school and being a part of that community. And then one more picture, Maurice. This is a picture from the 1940s of a Sunday school picnic. So after church, I don't know where they went out, but somewhere. Jody, is your mom in that picture? Oh, look, Jody's mom is in that. Which one is she, Jody? Second one in on the right, with kind of like the overall looking thing. That's so fun. That's Jody's mom right there. That's so cool. So just to kind of see the value here of community. They pursued that, following Jesus and community. That is part of the DNA of our church. So in Hebrews chapter 10, verses 24 and 25, it says this: "Let us think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works." And here it is: "And let us not neglect our meeting together, as some people do, but encourage one another, especially now that the day of his return is drawing near." Again, verse 25 says, "Let us not neglect our meeting together." So the matriarchs and patriarchs of this church valued community. He said, we want to have a church family here in South Salem, really a neighborhood church. The founders of this church desired for there to be a Christian community right here in South Salem. And I just think it's incredible that most of us, and you sitting in this room, have never met a lot of these families that started this church, but now we're a part of that story, where now we have the ability to build on some of those concepts, the community pursuing Jesus that they desired for South Salem, and being the family of God that he has called us to be. Look what it says in the book of Romans, chapter 12, verse 10. It says, "Love each other with genuine affection and take delight in honoring each other." Now, the reason I chose this verse, the NLT translation says, "Love each other with genuine affection." A more literal translation says, "Love each other like the love of a brother or the love of a sister," meaning that this is your family. And the thing about your family is you can't get rid of them even if you want to. Can I get an amen from the church, maybe? Like we have the crazy uncles and aunts. You got the annoying brothers and sisters, the spiritual mothers and fathers and grandparents. But that's the beauty of the community of the church. And really, we need multi-generational impact in here. We need all generations, right? It's not, I don't know if healthy is the right word, but we don't want just like, we're just a bunch of 20-somethings, 30-somethings. No, we need the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, right? We want to be multi-generational, to be a church family. And again, your family is always your family. To build a space, a place that is safe, a place where you are loved. This is our story as a church. That you may find community and love in these walls and in this community. So there's this quote that I've been reflecting on from a newspaper article by a woman named Dorothy Seeger. Do any of you guys know Dorothy Seeger? Kim, I'm going to call you out one more time because this is Kim's grandmother here. But Dorothy was one of the matriarchs, and her husband was a patriarch of this church. And in a newspaper article, she talks about growing up in this area. And it was just so cool to me. And again, I'm not saying back in this era was perfect by any means, but some of the elements that really stuck out to me. She said, the quote says this: when she was 77, she said, "The best years of our lives were when we were going to Liberty School." So again, all of the community out here existed right there, right really on this property and that one over there. The school, the church, it all happened on this street corner. And in that article, she said, Dorothy said, one of her favorite memories, and she said the best years, again, of her life, Liberty Road used to be a dirt road. And they used to, in the wintertime, they would get water out and cover the dirt road with ice and kind of use it as an ice skating rink. Isn't that kind of fun to think about? And then they had Margaret, her daughter, Dorothy's daughter, Kim's mom was telling me they used to have these things called box socials, and she said everyone knew everyone, and it was just like it was a family. Now, again, there's aspects of that are really positive and healthy, a community where people are known, and that's what I pray will happen in our community. And it's the community atmosphere we want to create. A place that is safe, a place where you are known. And again, the cool thing, I gave it away a little bit, is do you know what came to our church from Liberty School? That is kind of a relic that's in our church building from the school. Does anyone know what it is? I told you, right? We have a bell in the belfry over here. You can ring it even after the service. There's a rope there. You can pull it down and the bell will ring. And I found some cool historical documents. One, Maurice, you can put that picture up there. So check this out. This is such a cool picture. I believe this is our church building, I think. It's either they're bringing it down from the elementary school or they're putting it up in our belfry. But the woman in the back with the covering over her head is Margaret, Kim's mom. And then the guy who is wearing the hat on this side of the picture, holding the bell up, that's what Margaret told me, the janitor of Liberty School, who owned the yellow house next to the church where our church building exists today. And so the cool thing about this bell is not only was it the Liberty School bell, before that, it was actually the original fire bell for the city of Salem. Dating back, I found articles that Margie Morley found from some record somewhere, that there's stories about this bell in our belfry from the 1870s. And if there was a fire, they used to have to ring the bell. There's actually one that was a kind of a humorous article I read where, there's government drama even in the 1870s, you guys. That's just what happened. So the bell was broken. I believe it was this bell was broken. It had a crack in it. And they were like, what are we going to do? We need a bell. Like, it was the life of our community. It's how they warned people about fires and all these things. And so the government came together and said, well, what we're going to do, one guy from the community said, I could fix the bell for like $1,000. Like, I can melt it down, re-pour it and fix the crack and it'll be good as new. But they decided to instead outsource and buy a giant bell from Seattle. And back in the 1870s, you got to ship it by a train and all this stuff. So the article, it was kind of like a begrudging article, about throwing the city under the bus. They said that the bell that they ordered from Seattle, much larger, they brought it down. It was like $5,000. And the community was like, I don't know if we should do this or not, but the city went ahead and did it anyways. And they got the bell and they put it up. And everyone thought the bell was terrible and it didn't sound good at all and it wasn't very loud. So they ended up getting rid of that bell and just fixed this bell anyways, which is, I believe, the bell in our belfry. So for decades, that bell was the one that was in downtown Salem warning people of for fires and all of these things. And then it went to the elementary school. And then it came to our church. So now what's cool is every time that the bell rings out, it reminds me of the stories that I heard from Margaret and the stories I read from Dorothy Seeger in the newspaper. It reminds me of all of the kids who were playing out in front of Liberty Elementary School and the frozen dirt roads and the box socials and meeting at church in the basement of the school. And I just thought that was a really neat history. Where every time the bell rings now, it reminds me of the love of brothers and sisters and in the family of God. And again, when we reflect back, I'm not saying that the church was perfect by any means, but the pursuit of Jesus and community has always been there. The matriarchs and the patriarchs of this church want to create a place that is safe, again, a place where you're known, a place where you are loved. This is a part of our story. So Psalms chapter 34, verse 3, it says this, "Come, let us tell of the Lord's greatness. Let us exalt his name." Everybody say together. Come, let us tell of the Lord's greatness. Let us exalt his name together. And I've just been reflecting. I've had 2 weeks to reflect because we couldn't do church last week because of the snow. So I've been thinking about it an extra long time. But thinking about our church has been here for over 80 years, getting close to 90. thinking about what we've been through as a community, just on a historical level in our country and across the world. And to see that the thumbprint of the matriarchs and patriarchs still exists in this church today. And the cool thing is that now you guys get to be a part of that story. How the story is not finished yet, and you get to put your fingerprints and your thumbprints in the story here at Liberty Christian Church on the corner of Skyline and Liberty Road. So as we close, I just want to reflect on what God has brought this church through since its founding in the late 1930s. So since 1937, as a church community, we have gone through economic depression. In fact, this church was founded at the very kind of tail end of the Great Depression. This church has made it through a world war and other wars. This church has made it through a presidential assassination in 1963. Any of you remember this time? Our church made it through a volcanic eruption in 1980. Anyone raise your hand if you remember this? A little more of you, not me, but maybe you. This church made it through Y2K. Does anyone remember Y2K? We're still here, you guys. We're still here. We made it through 9/11 and a horrific terrorist attack. We made it through, and sorry, taking a step back, from what I heard is when the 9/11 happened, people were filling in this church and here, and they were praying as thousands of other churches were doing the same. In 2008, we made it through a national economic crisis. This church has remained. And in 2020, we made it through a global pandemic. How many of you guys remember the global pandemic part? We made it through that. Since the foundings of this church in the late 1930s, we have gone through pastoral transitions, many pastoral transitions. If you look at the beginning, it was almost every 12, 18 months, but a lot of pastoral transitions. The church has made it through many over the last 85 years, many families leaving and families coming. This church has made it through arguments over the kitchen, healthy conflict, and unhealthy conflict over the last 85 years. This church has made it through. We've made it through tremendous loss, and we've made it through starting as a farming community church, and the city has really engulfed us as a community. We have, in the last 85 plus years, we have met in homes. We've met in the basement of a schoolhouse. We met in a building built by volunteers with a loan from the First Christian Church in downtown Salem for $4,000. We are a church that will continue to persevere and pursue Jesus and love each other as a family of God. Is that beautiful? Continuing the story to create a place that is safe, a place that you are known, and a place that you are loved. This is our story. And you are a part of that today. That you could put your thumbprints in this community and say, this is who we want to be. Building on the aspects that the matriarchs and patriarchs, since they founded this church in the end of a Great Depression, through all the things we talked about, this church and Jesus has remained. And my prayer is that 85 years down the road, there will be some young gun pastor who also can't grow a beard. And he'll look back and say, now the founders of our church believed in this, and then in the early 2020s, a community not refounded, but continued to build upon what the matriarchs and patriarchs of this church believed in. That there will be a healthy and a thriving community of Jesus followers in South Salem, the family that we can all be a part of, the family of God. And 85 years down the road, there'll be another guy or gal or whoever and say, this is what we believe in. And you guys get to be a part of that story. I'm so excited about that, to continue to build on this together as a church. You guys excited about that? What an honor it is, I think. And what an honor for us to be able to honor the matriarchs and patriarchs of this church who went through a lot of turmoil, a lot of work, built this building by volunteer labor, with a loan. They took a lot of steps of faith to put this community here that we all get to be a part of today. So what does it look like for us to continue to take those steps of faith to honor the matriarchs and patriarchs and follow in the pursuit of Jesus and community to create a place that is safe, a place where you're known, a place where you are loved. So with that, I'm going to close in prayer, and our team's going to come. We're going to close in worship and communion together as a church, and then we're going to take a short intermission, and we'll have our quick business meeting at the end. But for now, let's just pray and focus on Jesus, be recentered on his death and his resurrection. So would you pray with me? God in heaven, I thank you so much for the matriarchs and the patriarchs of our church family. Those who took a huge step of faith to build this building and to establish a Christian community deep in South Salem. And I pray that as a church, we can honor their legacy and continue to build upon a healthy community and following Jesus and being the family that you've called us to be. Brothers and sisters in Christ, mothers and fathers of the faith, we thank you that we even have this opportunity. We thank you that through all of the ups and downs and the historical events this church has made it through and more historical events to come, Lord, you are good and you are with us every step of the way. Through all of the joyous moments and all the moments of grief, you are there. That we have the opportunity and the honor to put our own fingerprints in this community, to continue to pursue Jesus and building a safe place where people can be known. We thank you, we love you. In Jesus' name, all God's people said,